welcome back to another episode of OHKO, a Pokemon VGC podcast. It is now officially the start of the new season. Worlds is behind us, Regulation H is upon us, and Baltimore is just around the corner. So we're going to talk all about Regulation H and a couple of the new changes going ahead into this season. My name is Sierra Dawn, joined here by my co-host, Joe Brown. Joe Brown, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I can't believe we're already getting prepared somewhat for Baltimore. As I hope you enjoyed your World stretch. We had 2 months where we had nothing to talk about, and then had a Worlds episode, a Worlds recap episode, and then right back into the regional circuit. There's no rest for the wicked in the Play Pokemon circuit, right? Only a 3-week break.
Yeah. So speaking of no rest for the wicked, how about just no rest? I don't know about you, but it has been a little bit since Hawaii now. In my sleep schedule, it is not recovered. I am going through it still.
I think I'm for the most part recovered. I think what actually helped me was because I was living off of France time for a month. That like I was already waking up early. I don't know how to explain it, but like I used to go to bed super late, as you know, as many people know. I'm much of a night owl, but because I had to force myself to go to bed early for a month straight, it like helped force me to be like, oh, it's 10 o'clock, I'm tired. Like, so it didn't matter if it was 10 o'clock in Hawaii or 10 o'clock in Jersey or 10 o'clock in Connecticut. Like, it's just I was like, I gotta go to bed now. So I've actually been pretty fine for the most part.
Jealous because I am getting wrecked. It's like going to Hawaii, it wasn't too bad. The first day I was a little tired. It was like, all right, like soldier on through, it's fine. But I am also very naturally a night owl, and it takes quite a bit of work on my sleep schedule for like a casual 1 a.m. night like bedtime to wake up at like 9 or 10 or something. Still within like an acceptable range, even if it's kind of pushing it. Right now, I'm like going to bed at like 4 or 5 a.m. I'm sleeping till like 2.
Oh wow!
Because like this is like what I would just like. This is what my body wants to go to. This is like perfect, except it's actually not. So I'm struggling. I'm having a tough time, but it's okay. We're here. It just means after the podcast episode, I have a lot of time to play Reg Age. So
there you go.
or Deadlock. One of the two.
Okay, let's talk about this because I freaked out. I received an email from my Steam friend Justin Burns giving me a code to play Deadlock, and I was like, oh my god. So like let's do it. We have all day to talk about Reg Age. What is Deadlock? What's going on here?
All right. So it's literally League but Overwatch. That's literally
okay.
it. So it's like the same kind of gameplay and objectives as League. The same. I don't actually get to really fight anyone for the first like 10-15 minutes. I'm just fighting minions and doing the same thing over and over.
I like that.
Yeah, to build up gold, aka souls in this game. And then you're trying to get your items so you can get stronger. And yeah, but the playing field instead is like this giant, like kind of like a city with different lanes. And yeah, you're basically Overwatch characters doing this instead of little League legends. So it's pretty fun. I think the biggest thing right now is people who haven't played League or watched League are right away going ahead and taking engagements and losing. And you play League. So you know that all of a sudden you're just behind. Anyone who doesn't play League, essentially, you want to be leveling up. And if you're not leveling up and you're taking fights and you're dying, you're about to have a really bad time for the entire rest of the game, which can span about 25 to 40 minutes. So playing the game with people who don't necessarily understand that as of yet has definitely been a little difficult, but we're all kind of getting better on the objective things. So now I just have to get used to like the gunplay and the Overwatch-esque things. I haven't really played much Overwatch, so that's it's a little difficult. Fun though.
No, yeah, I feel it. Okay, so now maybe I'll check it out. Now since I have a code anyway from Justin Burns,
Yeah, and it's like people have been like 5-stacking it, and it's actually been like everyone's kind of learning together. And if somebody's bad, it's just kind of like, all right, we are all there. Don't worry, as we are still bad. So like, you definitely should. So
okay,
you should. And if there's anybody listening who's like, oh man, I really want to play the game, but I don't have an invite. Once somebody has the game, they can invite somebody else into it. It's like a closed like beta type thing. So like, feel free to ask in the Discord. I might like delete off of Steam after because I do reserve that for people I know better. But I'll add you. I'll send you the code so you can get playing. So for anyone interested.
I'm excited because this game, if we're all starting from square one, that means Sierra can't flame me like in Valorant. So we're going to be on the same level, you know?
I was very nice to you in Valorant because I knew going into it that you're going to be very bad. So, like, I don't know. I don't know what you wanted from me, bud. But no, it's fun. It's fun. So that's probably what I'll be doing after. So if you want to join, you're more than welcome. But
sorry, I got a podcast edit, you know?
Oh yeah, that's true. Sucks to suck.
You
All
know,
right.
one of the two of us can actually successfully export a podcast nowadays, you know?
Wow. All right. We're moving on to talking about Reg H. People don't have to hear the waffling. That was a low blow there, Joe Brown. Low blow.
Hey, it's not offense to you. It's your computer I've been taking a dig at.
Yeah, it's fine. But
let's
talk about Reg H for realsies. All right, the Pokemon at the podcast. The reason why the people are here. First impressions of it so far, because Reg H, hearing the rule set, I was very intrigued since Regulation A, we didn't really get too much time with. Obviously, it's a different era now since we've had Homemon, so even though there is no paradoxes and no legend, like no ruins, we do still have like Incineroar, Rillaboom, all these Pokemon that have been added in. And I don't know if I necessarily maybe would have liked Reg A had it stuck around for longer based off of how I've been enjoying Reg H, because I don't know. It's not the Incineroar and the Rillabooms of the format that I'm finding annoying, let me tell you what.
Yeah, I'm happy you're coming around, Sierra, because this is something when we were recording live as Regulation H broke the news when we were recording our anniversary podcast, and we were like, oh, what do you think? It's going to be so fun. Everybody loved Reg A. Well, and everyone said, oh, it's so unfair that Regulation A, you only had won the tournament, just San Diego. It was like, it didn't get to develop, blah, blah. I played back then. I was not a fan of Reg A. I think Regulation A had quite the ability to be toxic with the archetypes of popular strategies, let's say, right? And I think from the get-go, I think the biggest thing to understand with Regulation H is there's a difference between a gimmick and an archetype, right? So like people like to throw the gimmick term around. Like I saw a tweet that was like, which of these gimmicks is your least favorite? You know, and it was like, you know, Torkoal Sun, like Lilligan Sun, or you know, Archaludon Rain, or, you know, Dondozo, and it's like, well, I don't know if those are like a gimmick the way that something like, say, like Max Evasion Muck, like when that was going around, right? A couple of regulations ago. Like, I would feel that's more gimmicky than an archetype. I think the rain teams that are really frustrating because Archaludon only has 2 weaknesses and he has a special attack boosting move that hits in 1 turn under the rain and he's really tough. That's really powerful. I think that's an archetype. I don't think it's a gimmick. So, but I would say there are a lot of archetypes in Regulation H that I find frustrating. I'm still trying to learn. I'm not saying it's a bad format by any stretch of the imagination, but like, I'm happy that you're on my side that like, man, Regulation A plus, which is what people want to call this, this format. Like it isn't just inherently good because legendaries aren't legal. You know what I mean?
So my thing with it is for Regulation A, because I did play during Regulation A. I played at San Diego. I had my original team had a Masquerada. The one I ended up bringing had an Azumarill. I don't remember anything from the team from there. I like the format. I think the thing is we were all dog water at Pokemon Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah.
Now we kind of realize what Pokemon are a bit better than maybe we originally thought. A development that we would have seen with a couple more months, surely. But we never really got that opportunity. And because of that, we now get to see it now because now everyone knows kind of how to play the game. So that's kind of been my biggest issue with it so far. I think in about a month, I think the meta will kind of like slow down a little bit and be a little bit more bearable. But I think it's been a little bit more unfun than past regulation changes with the hyper offense at the beginning because like this Mousehold Annihilate, like I didn't even see that in like the top teams, but it's still just kind of whooping me on ladder because I don't know how to play against it because I'm just silly. I'm just a little silly, you know? And then the size spam's just annoying. I'm like currently literally on ladder right now. I'm just playing Psy Sand on Dozo and it's just whooping people because it's just it's just annoying to go up against, right? There's the Hisuian Typhlosion with the Whimsicott.
Yeah.
James Beck featured it on his channel, and he's just literally like every game he's like, well, this just folds the Typhlosion, and he just sits there and clicks Sunny Day or Tailwind and Typhlosion and just wipes the board. And then I played it on my own stream, and I did the same thing. Like, it was just silly. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man.
I don't mean to. I'm not laughing at your sadness. It's just I do find it funny because like the highs of like 4 weeks ago compared to where we are now, where everybody is like, "Oh my god, this is a breath of fresh air. Shifu is gone," and then it's like, man, well, Rillaboom's still up in that 60% usage tiers. He's like, Rillaboom's kind of a big problem. Seems like Psy-Spam teams are kind of a big problem. I lost a game on the ladder earlier today to a Life Orb, Psychic Terrain, Expanding Force, Hatterene, just one-shotting me with neutral hits. Like, it's crazy that Pokemon does that much damage. It doesn't even seem like it should be able to do that much damage, but yeah, I do think this is one of the more divisive formats. I would argue I could be wrong. I don't know what our listeners think. I think it's more divisive than Regulation G because at least Regulation G, you always had a starting point, right? With whatever your one restricted Pokemon was, like you could always have that little piece to go back to build your core around. But this one is like, man, I could just stick Dundozo, Tatsugiri, and Indeedee Armarouge and Tyranitar Excadrill all on one team, or like there's a lot of teams out there that are like Torkoal Lilligant and the Dozo doubles and Hatterene and Indeedee, right? Like you're just choosing or you put Annihilate and Mousehold instead of the Hatterene and Indeedee slot. Like you're just kind of like choosing busted cores, busted duos, and slapping them onto a team of 6. It doesn't really feel like a synergistic 6 as of yet. I'm sure Baltimore will feel more like that, but right now it doesn't feel that way to me.
Which again, I think is an early pain point of the format, but it's been interesting hearing some people talk about it. Obviously, I have a limited view of what players are saying, but the players I know have also stated their disdain for the format so far. It's been very much so like, yeah, like this team building isn't fun. The way this is playing out isn't necessarily the most fun. Like nobody really seems to be enjoying it so far from like the view that I have. I do think that there is always going to be that, hey, this current format sucks and I like the past one more issue that we have every single regulation. We hated Reg G. And then now it's like, man, I can't wait till we get our restricteds back. Like we hate all we talked about was how much we loved Reg A because we never had it for more than like one event. And now it's like, here's Reg A+. It was like, oh, we hate this too. Everything else was so awesome though. I miss Qian Pao. Like Qian Pao came out, we were like, we hate Qian Pao. This guy's too strong. He's too good, but he also sucks at the same time.
I swear to you, Sierra, I have literally said that while playing on Showdown, like, man, like it's like somebody's trying to like, oh man, Annihilate for like Arch Out. I'm like, man, I really wish I had Qian Pao right now just to do a little bit more damage. Like, if only I'm allowed to use Qian Pao and my opponents can't, I'll feel a little better about the matchups,
Yeah, I heard it too about Iron Hands. Like, oh, this team of 5 would be perfect if I had Iron Hands. Like,
yeah, right. Just use Terra Electric Hariyama. You get there.
Oh, perfect. It's like the same thing, right? But, I want to know then going into, before we hop into cores, the common Pokemon that we're seeing based off of tournament results, because despite the fact it isn't updated for the in-game ladder, people, of course, are holding their own tournaments and stuff because we have a wonderful grassroots scene. Want to know kind of, and I feel like people would maybe want to know for how they should hop into a new regulation, like how you hop into a new regulation with your team building, with your playing, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think there's no one correct answer on team building, right? I think you'll hear that from pretty much everyone if you ask advice on. Personally, I've always preferred team building and being a part of like that group conversation and EV spreads and doing damage calcs and like trying to find a well-crafted team more than playing. So like that's, I feel like my area, I don't want to say area of expertise because I'm not an expert at it, but that's where my enjoyment comes with VGC is more in team building than playing. And so personally for me, I I don't just try to do like this. You go on, Lab Mouse and look at the 6 most used Pokemon, and you make a team and go play. Like, I try to check specific Pokemon's viability, right? And you're going to be wrong a lot. I'm going to be wrong on specific Pokemon if I think, man, I haven't used what's his name, Garganackle, since Regulation A, pretty much, right? So it's like, let me see if I can make a team that Garganackle can succeed on. Not 5 Pokemon that support it and it's the only option, but like a team that I can work on. And I'm like, all right, let me try, all right, Garganackle with this Pokemon is really working. So like I keep that course. So the one I had today that I was actually playing, I was trying to build back in, I want to say Regulation C. It was either B or C. I can't remember. I think it was C. I built this Ceruledge team that was actually really fun. Like I had like Ceruledge, Fluttermane. I can't remember some of the other Pokemon, but it was basically like set up with a bunch of bulk ups with Ceruledge, and then click Bitterblade to Drain Punch back. So it's Fire Drain Punch. And so I was like, all right, let me see if I can still redo that same strategy. And what I quickly learned is it's a lot harder this time around because of some of those DLC Pokemon that were not there in Regulation C, like Whimsicott and like some of the other issues that just make the games go a little bit too fast. But while I was building to see if Ceruledge is a good Pokemon, I had Alolan Ninetales on the team and to, set up Aurora Veil, make everything bulky. And then I saw someone had Alolan Ninetales and Baxcalibur together. And I was like, okay, so I put that on the squad. And then so as I look, I'm like, all right, maybe the Ceruledge part of this team isn't as great as I thought it was. Maybe this, the Sinistcha part, like, okay, that's probably maybe just go back to a Moongus or something like that. But I found a new core. I'm like, okay, well, now I know that Alolan Ninetales and Baxcalibur is pretty good together. So how about I just start from scratch with those two and then add Pokemon on? So that's generally how I like to do the team building, is just like look for little nuggets of viable Pokemon, and then like once you hit, like, you feel like you strike gold, then you go down that road, if that makes sense.
So why haven't you tried, because you're talking about a lot about Ceruledge, why haven't you tried Armarouge more in this format?
Well, I think the Armarouge is a little more of it's a little more like one note, it feels like, and when I want to use it as a Trick Room Sweeper, not like the weak armor version that I know is also doing really well right now. And I do, because I know that Armarouge is viable, because I remember playing Regulation A and I'm also seeing the results from these other limitless tests. I'm not spending my time right now trying to learn if it's viable, because I know that it is, right? So It's the same reason I didn't build an Archaludon team right now, or I didn't build
because you know it's good,
because I know it's viable. So if I was playing in Baltimore, I might start testing a team that was built around Armarouge, but since I'm not, I'm just taking my time trying to learn what some of the other viable Pokemon might be.
That makes sense. I definitely, like, going into a new format and, like, team building right out the gate, it's definitely something I have a lot of respect for, because, I get so lost. The first team that I built, let me see if I still have it in the builder. It was something. Unfortunately, I don't think I have it.
The first Regulation H team that you were building?
Yes, it was. I think I might have it on a different account because I don't like to ladder on main. But it was grassy, it was Rillaboom and Chestnut with Belly Drum.
Ooh.
I was just like, okay, and then it was just like other just like random good Pokemon. Team was hot garbage, not good. It's like, I feel like if somebody was actually like good at team building, like they could probably take the concept and do something okay with it. But it's just like, I'm not a team builder. I never will be. I never have been. I am a team moocher. So getting into a new format, I always like hit up the group chats and I'm like, hey guys, any teams that you can give me? I'll only play it on alt. I won't play it on main. So like people won't know. Can I have it, please? And like, normally I can get a couple of teams.
But you still have comfort teams, right? You still have Sun, right? So there's archetypes that you have that prior experience from prior regulations that probably helps you do well in this one.
Oh, like for playing, I'm fine, but I can't team build. I cannot. I'm so bad at it. I'm so bad at the team building. Like the amount of times that Ugarte is like trying to take me through a team, I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, What you're saying makes sense, but I can't come up with it on my own. Funny enough, out of all the teams, I don't have a Sun team that I'm testing right now. I have funny enough, because Reg A, there was multiple events, and there was just like a couple events with a lower power level. So I have Luca's 2023 Liverpool Regionals team that are just like, you know what? Like, yay,
Hey, they
it's
were
all
all
viable
legal back
Pokemon.
then, you know?
Yeah, take this. I have an Apollyon. I have Garchomp Talonflame with Bramblegas. I have Psysan 222.
Yep.
Palafin Hyper Offense. Just a generic rain team. Mousehold Annihilate with Archaludon. Another rain team. Like, it's all just rain and sand. It's rain and sand. I really should make a Sun team. Like, that's kind of silly of me, but
it is on brand for you. That's how I'm surprised. I saw you when you were streaming. You were playing with the Typhlosion team, so I was like, oh, okay, she's already locked in Sun mode. But
yeah, because it was a rent. Like, I was thinking about it when laddering, and I was like, I really should have just grabbed the Pokepaste and loaded it as well. But when I was loading it, I kind of forgot that I could go like scope out the YouTube channels for that. But normally, that's how I get started with regulation. I just grab a bunch of different teams and just hit the ladder on an all, the best of one ladder, and just try and force my way through the meta, like kind of like, well, you're gonna learn today type thing. So I just like hop in here and I'm like, I don't know how much damage this Archaludon's gonna do, and all of a sudden just like OHKO something, and it's like, okay, this is how much damage it does. Now I know for next game, forfeit, go on to next one, and I don't think it's definitely the fastest or smartest way to learn how to play the game, but if you're one that learns from hands-on experience, I mean, it's how I learned VGC in the first place, and I cast for Pokemon, so it has some merits.
If you learn by bashing your head into a wall and then eventually breaking the wall open with your head, then you know it's a great strategy.
Yeah, if you don't give up and you eventually do force your head through that wall, it's fine. It's only a bad strategy if you give up halfway through, right?
So I think we can take this moment, and obviously we're going to talk about some different tournaments that have happened so far, and you know some of the good teams and why they have synergy and stuff. But I think we got to talk about the elephant in the room, and that elephant is we got to talk about the bridge in the room, because that Pokemon is Archaludon, who is quite. I don't even know how to explain how frustratingly strong this Pokemon is. In when Regulation G it came out in January, or it was legal in January, just like Raging Bolt, just like some of these other DLC 2 Pokemon. But turns out when you take away every single legendary Pokemon from the Pokedex, Archaludon can start to shine a little bit better.
Is that your most hated Pokemon?
It's not hated because I kind of feel weird because I did like using it. I actually used the team in Reg F with Archaludon on it. And then Reg G had this like really funny this rental code that was a Kyogre Archaludon team, but it also had beat up for Terrakion and stamina on Archaludon. So I do like the Pokemon, and I like that it is strong. I just think that like Dragon Steel is a really good typing. You only have 2 weaknesses, and you can terrestrialize out of those weaknesses, so it's like you can't even pin it necessarily, because every game it can just like kind of get out of one of those 2 weaknesses. But it is definitely the most frustrating Pokemon I'm dealing with right now to try to handle offensively. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have not enjoyed it. I feel a bit better into Archaludon than I did at the beginning of the format. Part of it due to just playing a little bit more, getting better with kind of just like swapping and not letting it just get absolutely boosted and start going off the rails. But as well, the type of teams that I play. So obviously, if I'm playing a lot of sand and you see the Archaludon in the rain, it's just a well-timed turn on when to be bringing in your sand, bring in your T-Tar. So that same turn that they click Electro Shots, all of a sudden it is a 2-turn. You can start to handle it a little bit more, which has just been really, really nice as well. Like, making sure you do have a special attacking Pokemon to just kind of go through. Like, I definitely, like, it is super annoying. I have not enjoyed it. Like, the constant Electro Shots in rain when Pelipper is as strong of a Pokemon as it is just obnoxious. But I think with that precedent, that weather is going to be just super strong in this regulation in general. Already with like some of the team archetypes, that is a big thing. But I think if you do not have an answer to somebody else's weather right now, like, you're kind of just, you're cooked. And I think that's where things like Archaludon is really going to thrive, if it's just like a disrespected team building, right?
Yeah, I think you need to have. It's like maybe this is how we can voice it here. The frustration with Regulation H is that because you need to have a Dondozo answer and a Psy-Spam answer and an Archaludon Rain answer and a Mouse Ape answer, it's like you just keep building answers and not a team because you're just trying to cover so many different cores. So like it's really hard to have a cohesive team of 6 where like 4 of your Pokemon are specifically dedicated to one matchup, one matchup each.
I think it's more so like balance in general. Because when I look at like Dondozo answers, I feel like they're answers that have a kind of like a wide variety on like a couple of different Pokemon, right? Or already you're having a Pokemon and they can also have that use. So, for example, Clear Smog back on Amoonguss. It was something that we did see in past regulations when Dondozo was still one of the more powerhouse Pokemon. It's just kind of reverting back. It's not bringing in Amoonguss so you have the Dondozo answer. It's, I'm just shifting a move. And this is also just good into other things that are boosting, because you're looking at things like Volcarona, which can also just go for the quiver dances, should also be really strong in this format, etc. So I think if you're approaching team building by only looking at answers, it's not necessarily the greatest thing, but I do think that kind of the weather of it all will be one of those things you do need to have some sort of answer on. And if you're not having your own weather, then you definitely need to have a team that can kind of just like brute force through it. And I'm not really seeing too many that can do that straight from the get-go. Like, the one thing is to make my own Archaludon and like bait out their Terra, and I just use for something else, but that's kind of playing within the weather mode. But there is a Pokemon that has been playing within weather modes that I've seen people use on their teams, not rain teams, but Basculegion, which I think has been fairly interesting.
Yeah, Basculegion's a really strong Pokemon. I always remember Wolf almost brought it to Worlds in Yokohama. If you watched his Worlds video from last season, it was that 6th mon on the team, and then at one point his friends were like, "No, we can't do this. We'll restart." So I was wondering what could have been if Basculegion won Worlds, right? But it seems like a lot of the Pokemon, the Legends Arceus Pokemon, I should say, like the Hisuian Pokemon, are finally getting their chance to shine right now because of the lack of legendaries. Like Basculegion gets to hang out because their Shifu's not an option. You can't just be like, "Oh, I'd rather use your Shifu." Well, it's not legal. So now if you want a really hard hitting water type that's pretty fast, so you can use Basculegion. I like that there's different different ways. You don't just have to have it on a rain team. You can, like, as a rain Swift Swim Sweeper, you can use it more of like a choice band last respects also. Like if it's your last Pokemon around, it does a lot of damage. So I think that's pretty cool. But will it be forced to be tied to the Pelipper Archaludon teams? I guess we'll see once Baltimore hits. Like, I would love to see if people kind of break it away and just use it as just a strong water attacker, strong ghost attacker, instead of being tied to Pelipper Archaludon.
I mean, if this is the time to start talking about the grassroots and this stuff, I feel like it's been pretty mixed so far. Looking first off at the VGC Trainer School Open, which had a $400 prize pool. I love to see prize pools on for our grassroots tours. But the second place team actually had a Basculegion with no weather. There is a Whimsicott on the team, but it's not one that does set weather. It's more so just a Tailwind Encore bot. So it is, this set in itself is Adaptability Choice Scarf, Terra Grass, then you have the Wave Crash Last Respects, both an amazing amount of damage. Even just like an Adaptability Aqua Jet, insane. But this team overall, Whimsicott, Indeedee, Golden Go, Blood Moon, Ursaluna, Armors, and Basculegion, no weather. So especially with the Choice Scarf, you can bring it and have it just be the fastest thing for that last Pokemon to have that last respects with. And if somebody's bringing rain, all of a sudden you're going to be doing a lot of damage very quickly with something like Wave Crash. So I think it's pretty mixed so far. The 5th place team does have it on a rain team. They got the Pelipper, Archaludon, Basculegion, Amoonguss, Golden Go, and Rillaboom. So really kind of going all in. But I think out of all things, despite how I would have originally thought it has to be on a rain team to thrive, I don't think the Basque Legion has to be. I think it's pretty flexible in that sort of way.
Yeah, and if you look specifically on that second place team with the Scarf Basque Legion, this is where people might they might throw the gimmick term around, right? Because you have Choice Scarf flip turn. So either you're clicking, Trick Room flip turn 1, and you can't be fake. If you have Indeedee and Basque Legion out, you can't fake out either of them because of the terrain and because Basque Legion is a ghost type. So you flip turn as a glitch Trick Room and then bring in either Ursaluna or Armarouge. Or, as you see, there is that weakness policy Endure Armarouge on the team with your Choice Scarf Basque Legion right there for you. So that would be definitely something you got to worry about. I know this weakness policy, weak armor, Armarouge has just been really running a tear on people. It's not the way I like to play. I like to play just a regular conventional Trick Room version of it, but that's probably not the most effective way. But I think the Trick Room options are very interesting to me in this. As you know, I love Trick Room. I love building teams around Trick Room, but because Blood Moon Ursaluna, it almost feels like it not that it is a legendary, right? Because it's I guess legally not a legendary, but it almost feels like they kind of they checked off every legendary and just forgot to take Blood Moon Ursaluna out because it's so strong. It hits so hard with Blood Moon and everything.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we already closed the list. I guess Blood Moon's legal. I know it's not a legendary, but it feels like on a Trick Room team, it feels like you are slapping a legendary onto this core of regular Pokemon. And I think that's going to be interesting. We're already seeing timid 252 Ursalunas being run on Tailwind teams, like this Tailwind Whimsicott. A lot of people they don't even have to run it in Trick Room because the speed tiers are really wonky in this regulation. It's kind of really tough to know how much speed to invest on certain Pokemon. There's a lot of Pokemon that are really close in speed proximity. There's Gyarados and Rillaboom and Baxcalibur and some of the other stuff that are all in the 80s. It's how much speed creeping do I do? Because how much are they going to do in a general? How much speed is a general Rillaboom going to have? It's kind of tough. So the same with Ursaluna on the other end, on the slower end. Excuse me. There's a couple of Pokemon that are at that 60 speed tier where Ursaluna is 52. So if you just invest fully 252 into it, well, if they only put 4 or 8 speed into it on King Gambit at 60 speed, all right, then you're going to outspeed, you're going to one shot with Earth Power. So I think the speed tiers are going to be really interesting as this meta develops too.
Oh, they 100% will be, but I just want to go back 1 minute.
Yeah.
So looking at this team, the Whimsicott, Indeedee, Golden Go, Blood Moon, Ursaluna, the Basque Legion, and the Armarouge with flip turn into Armarouge Endure, weak armor, weakness policy, flip turn into either Whimsicott for the Tailwind, so you get this double speed and you're going to outspeed everything, or into Indeedee, so you set the Psychic Terrain, so your expanding forces do 1,000,000, and you have the Follow Me.
And or you have Helping Hand, or you could have Helping Hand too, depending.
But you're saying this isn't a gimmick?
I did say it was a gimmick. I said this is what people would consider gimmicky, a gimmicky strategy.
I thought that you this is what people would consider, but it's not. So I was just I was so caught up. Okay, I'm glad to clarify because I looked at this and I was just okay, I'm glad we clarified. But
yeah, listen, you can win with gimmicks, right? And I was just saying, at the beginning of the episode, not everything that is a gimmick is some of them are just archetypes, This one's certainly a gimmick.
I just had to make sure we were on the same page here. I'm glad that we are. Okay, back to speed tiers. Yeah, I've always struggled with my speed tiers, and I've been doing a very cohesive list of any Pokemon that could be relevant for anything. And I'm inputting all the data, and I'm just oh my god, this does not look fun. Everything's within the same tier. I already struggle with this. I'm you're telling me there was 5 different Pokemon all at the exact same speed stat, and it's cool.
Yeah, Archaladon also in that tier in the 80s. Also, I just remembered.
Yeah. I'm this just seems really fun. Obviously we have open team sheets that does not include stats or anything else, so it just kind of, it's funny, we go from Regulation G where it's haha, enjoy your Calyrex Shadow Rider speed ties, and how that's gonna go. And then this format, could be the same. Or then maybe not, because some people just, I don't know, like, I'm still remembering at EUIC the one Incineroar that, like, outsped the Rillaboom, despite the fact that normally, like, how they're built is the Incineroar is always gonna be slower, and
Yeah.
there is just this one that just outspeeds, which is just crazy. Like, we're either speed tying or things are just gonna be all topsy-turvy. Like, it's gonna be a very weird format in that regard, which I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if, like, how players wanna go about it, because I think speed tying just kinda sucks. Some
Yeah.
Pokemon, you kinda have to go for it, but being able to maybe be like, "Okay, I wanna go on the bulk or the attacking end," and then having ways to play around that is then, like, the more reliable course.
Well, think of even just like the 100 speed tier, right? Yeah, both Tauros of the Aqua breed and Blaze breed, which are both viable, which is nice. We haven't seen those Pokemon be viable in over a year, so it's cool that they're back into the meta. But Palafin is also 100, and
Yeah.
Salamence is also 100. And I'm just just kind of looking around. Volcarona is also 100 speed. So like, well, do I train mine for the bulky Volcarona that has no speed that I can outspeed, or do I go max speed on mine just in case I go max speed on theirs? What about, do I make my Archaludon? Do I invest in speed on it because my opponent's going to put speed on their Archaludon and I gotta win the Dragon War there? Like, also, is it going to be max speed Rillaboom because Rillaboom's just barely slower than Archaludon? So like, do I go 252? Like, it is a nightmare on there. But I do want to talk about the team that actually won this tournament this year, the VGC Trainer School Open. Matthew H from Australia, which was another Trick Room team, which is, it does feel like one of those things where they put cores together on a squad, but this is still more cohesive than a 2-2-2 that we would usually throw around. Like, this is definitely a fully invested Trick Room team that just have some like ways to maybe get the best of you in in a best of one or something like that. But it was Indeedee Hatterene, Torkoal Hisuian Lilligant, and then Araquanid Gallade.
I definitely think this is interesting. The thing that stands out to me is when I look at the Torkoal, the Hisuian Lilligant, but then the Indeedee and stuff, it's like, okay, you kind of got your fast sun mode, you got your trick room mode that you can also have the Torkoal in, and the Araquanid, I think, is just a really kind of fun pick in there. You have the wide guard kind of support, as well. Liquidation in rain is just going to absolutely slap. So all of a sudden, if someone wants to be overriding your weather, it's like, all right, I hope you're not scared of spiders because this is about to hurt. So I definitely, as much as my very, very first impression of seeing this team was like, oh man, early meta Trick Room, not fun. I do think overall, Trick Room and these kind of different cores for Trick Room will be the way for Trick Room kind of going on in this format, just because even in restricted formats, even in formats with the Ruined, with Paradoxes, being able to get up a sure Trick Room and have a Torkoal Eruption could just spell disaster. So having that in a format with just kind of an overall lower power level and less tools, I think it's going to be really strong. And I'm intrigued to see if the Araquanid is going to be sticking around. It's Clear Amulet as well, so it can't get its stats dropped, and it has Leech Life for that sustainability to heal. Like, I kind of vibe with this. I'd be very annoyed to play up against it, but I think that this is, I don't know, it might be the annoying Trick Room team that sticks around.
Well, right, that's exactly the frustration on your end as the opponent, but the reason why it's so good if you're the one playing it, this hard Trick Room team actually has so many different options that it's hard for your opponent to know, all right, which of these six Pokemon is he going to lead with? Like, I can't possibly predict, especially in a best of 3, which is what we play in a regional environment. Like, just because they let Indeedee Hatterene game 1 doesn't mean you don't get stomped by After You Eruption game 2, right?
Yeah.
On turn 1 if you expect Hatterene and Indeedee again. Like,
or even just a sleep powder, like a fast sleep powder and sun.
That's the variance that these hard Trick Room teams, like, they give you, because it's essentially like you're always calling the game. It feels like it obviously doesn't win every event, but but like it's your opponent essentially has to check your decisions and match what they think you're gonna do. Do I think he's gonna go for sleep pattern? Do I think he's gonna go for after you? Do I think he's gonna swap in Indeedee and do some crazy, like, you know, there's so many more turns open to the hard trick room player with this particular team of 6. And to answer you on Arachnid, I do love Arachnid. I think Arachnid is one of my favorite Pokemon to use back in regulation, wow, in Sun and Moon, I should say, regulation 2017, if we want to, VGC 2017. It is one, it's disgustingly strong on special defense, just like accidentally. Like you don't even have to invest in it. Like I remember I brought Arachnid to a PC once, and as I was filling out the info, like I thought I was gonna get like DQ'd on a like the team check, not DQ, but you know, like you don't fill out the information right. Like, you know, your stats are like, oh, you get a game loss or whatever. I was like,
yeah.
Oh, I wrote my Arachnid special defense, and I'm like, I looked at it like 2 rounds later. I was like, I must have lied. I must have put the wrong number at this stat, and it wasn't wrong. Like, you just go look at a fully invested, special defense Arachnid, and you'll be astounded by how big of a set. So it's really strong, specially, which helps against some of these special attacks in the format. For those who played back then, they know how strong Water Bubble is as an ability for these liquidations. We might not have Hydro Vortex anymore, but the liquidation is, especially in the rain, as you mentioned, going to be incredibly strong. I do think it will stick around, but I don't think it'll stick around on these Torkoal Lilligant teams because it's kind of anti-synergy to have Torkoal and then a water Pokemon as your attacker.
I think it's just, like, it's a good answer. You still have Leech Life, which I think does like a decent amount. But where I look at this and this team in general is I feel like it would struggle in an environment where all of a sudden you get the Trick Room up. As for anyone who's strictly an audio listener, I took over because Joe Brown just decided to absolutely choke on his water. But I'm looking at the fact that it's kind of just like a checkmate. It reminds me of like the Weather Ball on Pelipper, which is like, okay, well, if you do want to bring in the sun so I don't get my weather, I actually have something that is just like essentially a big FU, right? And that's how I see the Arachnid. You either had the Leech Life, you have the Wide Guard, which is a great supportive option, or if they want to bring the rain, you can still keep Torkoal in, go for a different move, and then all of a sudden just fire off something super powerful that maybe they're unprepared for.
The only issue is that Arachnid loses super hard to rain teams. Like, so sure, the rain being up helps you do more damage, but Arachnid really bad into Archaladon. I remember that even back in Regulation F when I was testing a Trick Room Arachnid team. Liquidation and Leech Life do literally nothing to Archaladon's typing, resist both of them. So, and if you ever use your Terra on another Pokemon in the game, then he has the really strong Electro Shots that hit you super effectively. So, in that matchup, all right, you want to go Terra Grass? Well, now you're still weak to Hurricane on the Pelipper. So I do think Arachnid has a really bad rain matchup.
But that's where you have the other Pokemon, like Earth Power from a Choice Specs Torkoal. That's going to deal some damage, especially too, since it won't really care about the stamina boost and whatnot. So like I feel like just that double combo, if you're going in for the hard Trick Room mode and considering like the Drowlodon speed, you just get the double into it. You have the one special attacker, you have the one physical. If they all of a sudden wanted Terra into, I think Terra Fairy is the one that I'm seeing a little bit more often. They wanted Terra Fairy into that to get away from the ground weakness, send it to neutral Choice Specs attack, and then all of a sudden it's a liquidation in rain, stab boosted. Which, that being the second hit, like it'll get the KO there, I would think, if it has terrestrialized. Yeah. So I feel like
saying, like, nice. I understand, yeah, that's what the other 5 Pokemon are there for. If they can deal with the Archaladon, like, sure, I'm just saying, inherently Arachnid, from my practice, from prior regulations and stuff, it really does struggle into rain teams and into Archaladon. So, sure, Torkoal can set up the sun, but then that also lowers the damage liquidation does, and you're still resisted. So now you're in the sun doing even more resisted liquidation damage into the Dragon type Archaladon.
I mean, you don't even need to have it with the Torkoal. Like, you still have the Indeedee hat, or like the Gallade, 3 Trick Room Pokemon, and you can just have it like okay, I'm going up against rain. I'm not even going to bring the Torkoal. All of a sudden, we'll see like Indeedee hat. We'll see the like Araquanid in the back. Like, I'm not even going to play this game.
I'm sure this team's strategy was against the Rain Archaludon teams was probably more around Indeedee, Hatterene, Torkoal, Lilligant than the Araquanid. Because Hatterene wanted to become a fire type, so you can resist Flash Cannon if they want to go for that into you as a fairy on turn 1. But Mystical Fire would, like, you're doing neutral damage into them. Even Dazzling Gleam obviously is neutral because it's Dragon Steel. So I'd probably imagine you use Indeedee Hatterene more in that in the Rain matchup, but obviously they went 12-2. They won the whole tournament over however many people were there. So, like, I'm sure they ran into their fair share of Rain matchups and came out on top.
Before we talk about the next team, I have to give you a Pokemon Showdown update, all right?
Okay.
Because I've just been kind of bodying through these games because I'm playing Sand. Turn 1, my opponent brings Golden Go Whimsicott, and I bring Indeedee Armor. Tell me why they had the audacity to just go ahead and nasty plot with a Golden Go on turn 1 as I fire off a Heat Wave with the Armarouge and click Trick Room on Indeedee. So all of a sudden, I KO the Whimsicott, Golden Go, enjoy your nasty plot. You have 15% health now, and now we're in Trick Room. And then they just conceded. They were out.
I mean, they effectively lost the game, right? And they
lost the game on the spot. They're done.
That's what I love about Indeedee Armors, and, like, you know, people obviously it gets the negative connotation online of the size spam and whatever. To this day, obviously I'm biased. I will not consider size spam as disastrous or as toxic as Dondozo strategies. I just won't. I admit I am fully biased, but I'm not going to say that they're on the same level because I still have to make decisions when I have 2 Pokemon out there. Dondozo, you got 1 Pokemon at a time. You know, you're not even making decisions. You know what I mean?
You don't make decisions for Armor Indeedee either. Like, the biggest decision is, do I click follow me? Or do I click
that is a decision, right? He could have clicked Shadow Ball right in your face the turn you tried to Trick Room with Indeedee, so you also could have followed me the Shadow Ball away and Trick Roomed with your Armarouge. Like, it is a tough call to make.
I don't think it's a tough call. Like, I'm just saying, I'm running these games. I'm not even bringing the Dondozo Tatsugiri. The reason being, while recording a podcast, I'd have to think too hard. I'm either bringing Lycanroc Titar in the lead, or I'm bringing Armarouge Indeedee, and I'm either clicking double Rock Slide, or I'm clicking Expand and Force, or a Heat Wave. Like,
okay, so let's say, for argument's sake, let's say Choice Spec Shadow Ball just wrecked your face. You set up Trick Room, but you lost Armarouge for it. Who are you bringing in next? Or was the game over?
I don't know.
I mean, that's why it is
important.
The thing
is they expected me to play, like, make the better play of the follow me for the Shadow Ball, and I just didn't. I just, like, ha, Trick Room, ha, Heat Wave, and then, like, kind of ended from there, right?
You're hurting me here.
I don't see why it has to be anything else, right?
Why you have done what? Also, why you're still on the Lycanroc train? You know, extra drills out there.
But Lycanroc has the funny Endeavor button.
Okay.
Yesterday on stream.
We want to talk gimmicks. Okay.
I mean, I'm not. Yeah. But yesterday on stream, literally, the Rillaboom comes in on their team, and I'm like, my Lycanroc is 1 HP. I cannot win this game. But I can surely Endeavor their Pokemon and have this Rillaboom faint due to Sand Chip, and it's just going to be funny. And sure enough, it was the funny. So I felt great. And now I endeavored an Archaludon with 3 defense boosts, but since it's at 1 HP, all I need to do is hit Rock Slide. Oh, I didn't hit Rock Slide. All right. I'm closing Showdown. I'm on the podcast now.
Oh my God. We get to see the live rage as she whiffs the 90% Rock Slide. You know, that's what you get. Maybe you shouldn't be playing while you're recording the podcast. You ever think of that?
Well, I was just clicking buttons.
Is that karma?
Buttons. I was just clicking buttons. All right.
Chat, I think that might be karma.
All right. We're on to the next team. We're on to the next thing. We're not talking about Lycanroc anymore. That Pokemon's dead to me. I will be running X-Girl from now on. Thank you very much. But,
we were talking about Dezu's team?
I was going to talk about other top-performing teams. Sinistra is one that Aaron, Cybertron, and Zhang made a video about, which actually is quite interesting in this format. And Dezu's team, 3rd place in that VGC Trainer School Open, having a Komo-O on the squad, which I definitely think is a Pokemon that will be able to hold its own in this format.
Yeah, I actually like this. I think this is pretty interesting. One, Sinistra, surprisingly high special attack that you wouldn't consider
Yeah.
because people use it so defensively, and of course because Machagacha is like a spread attack and it recovers a lot or recovers health. It doesn't do a lot of damage, so people just don't think that it has options. But like, it is actually really high special attack. I imagine most of the strategies like trying to get Como set up and then you bring Sinistra in later for the hospitality to help to recover the health. But yeah, I think that's a Pokemon that's probably going to be really good in this format. I don't think it's I don't anticipate Sinistra making the top 12 graphic, right? That's what we revolve our life around and on the streams is what's in the top usage graphic. I don't think it's going to make top 12, but I think there's certainly going to be a Sinistra team out there, whether it be a Trick Room team or not, that is just going to that's going to win a tournament because of just how much value it can bring to a team.
I think when I look at Sinistra, like exactly right when you're talking about the special attack, like that thing catches me off guard. I'm not gonna lie. I'm so used to the Rage Powder or the Life Dew, but no, it can actually dish out a considerable amount of damage. And when we are in a more rain, etc., and like meta, I think that's going to be really good. And the Como, just in general, I'm intrigued with a lot of these kind of. I'm gonna call it a mid-tier pick right now. I'm looking at like things like Como, Primarina, etc. in these mid-tier picks with how well they're gonna survive after Baltimore. Because I think, I don't know, it might be very dependent on where the meta goes on their survivability. The Como that we get to see on Dezu's team is going to be the throat spray, clanging scales, clanger a soul flamethrower, as opposed to looking back at like Michael Zhang's set, that one Sacramento, was it Peoria?
Sacramento.
It was Sacramento. My bad.
Yep.
My bad. That was like the Iron Defense body press set. So we're kind of switching up the Como-Os, but I'm not exactly sure for the Como how I think it'll fare, but I do think that Sinistra has a solid place like in this meta.
Yeah, and particularly with Como right now, I think it's taking advantage of everybody like kind of go through the withdrawal of losing Fluttermane and like losing strong offensive fairy types right now. That dragons are performing really well. Komodo, Baxcalibur, Salamence, Hydreigon, Garchomp. Like there are all these dragons that are kind of allowed to run rampant because there aren't as many strong like fairy attackers out there. Like, oh well, Primarina's in the format. It's like, well, yeah, that's kind of the problem. If that Primarina is one of our premier fairy attackers, like it's super slow. It has like it's probably better like supportively than trying to use it with the choice specs or whatever. So then you have Whimsicott, I guess, who's not usually invested in the in its special attack with Moonblast, Ninetales with a Moonblast. Like there's really not too many fairy types that are threatening these dragons. So as long as they, I also there's a lot of Terra Dragon. What's his face? Golden Go going around too, right? To resist the normal elements, and then since you're not going to get punished by fairy types. So I agree with you that as long as fairy types don't retake over the meta, maybe that whether that be the Sylveon or the Primarina or Whimsicott or the Clefable and different fairy types, if they don't become super necessary on every team like they kind of have been for the last year and a half with Fluttermane, then I think Como still and other dragons still have a chance.
So we got to talk about a fairy Pokemon that is on the come up and send. I was like, do I talk about the good fairy or the not so great fairy, and the fact that Sylveon is definitely underperforming what I thought it would in this meta? But I want to talk about the other fairy, which is a really interesting development of Reg H. So Reg G, we got to see Clefairy, where now, all grown up, Clefable's out to play now. Which I think has been a turn in the meta that I didn't necessarily expect. So the reasons that Clefairy was good was because with Eviolite, you'd get a really decent amount of bulk. You had the Friend Guard, you'd have the redirection. And yeah, it was just a great supportive Pokemon, especially when you had the big, bad, restricted attackers that you could have paired next to it, specifically the Calyrex Shadow Rider. Now with the Clefable, this has been kind of interesting because you're talking about Pokemon that maybe can have answers into Dondozos and other things, but we're seeing Clefable with Unaware with Skill Swap, which, for someone who has messed up Unaware not once but twice on broadcast, this is an absolute nightmare situation for me because the things that you can do with the Clefable are absolutely nasty. First off, you can just like unaware your own Pokemon, so like you don't really care about Dondozo stuff. But there is so many little funky interactions that you can have, especially to ignoring unaware. You can skill swap to get something for yourself. So we get to see Clefable with Volcarona. All right, I'm about to get targeted. I'm going to take the Flame Body from the Volcarona. You're going to target me now, and I'm going to burn you. Like it's going to be very quirky. It's going to be very fun. It's not a gimmick either. Like this actually just seems like a genuinely cool little team building choice in tech, which will be a lot of fun to follow through. Be really fun to cast on a hype standpoint, not on a keeping track standpoint.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to tell who is unaware of whom at this point. But Clefable definitely feels like it feels real. It feels like a real meta, supportive Pokemon. Like at first I had the same thought. I'm like, why are you not just running Clefairy? Clefairy is Friend Guard. If they're both using Follow Me, then it makes sense. But then using the unaware ability means that you can make it just super tanky and very difficult for Dondozo to deal with. So not only can you skill swap the Flame Body, but that's why I say it kind of feels like Cresselia at home. It's like we have Cresselia at home and we have Clefable because you can skill swap the Grassy Surge, or you can skill swap certain other attacks. Like Rillaboom's about to get knocked out. It's on the last turn of Grassy Terrain. Okay, well, it's Grassy, swap that, or Grassy Terrain has ended and Rillaboom's on the field. All right, swap abilities. Grassy Terrain is back now. Clefable can recover again. And it has the stats as a fully evolved Pokemon to be generally bulky. I know singles players can talk about the nightmare that Clefable is to deal with as a defensive core. But like skill swap, that was one way that like Cresselia used to do that, right? To you could skill swap Levitate onto your Primal Groudon so that it was no longer weak to ground on the other side, or like you could change the weathers, like you can skill swap with a Pelipper, or skill swap with Torkoal or something like that to reset the weather, skill swap with Tyranitar, something like that. So I do wonder how this is gonna develop over time. Is it just gonna stay Terra Steel for Golden Go, and then just the Moonblast Follow Me, skill swap Protect, or like is there going to be a point where sometimes a Moon gets dropped Protect for a fourth move? Like, so will someone ever feel so valuable to not have Protect on their Clefable and decide to put a fourth, maybe a second attacking move or another supportive move in that slot? Like, I do think there is a lot of room for Clefable to grow as a supportive Pokemon in this format.
Yeah, it's definitely what I'm keeping an eye on, especially too when you're talking about like Clefable's evolved. It can hold its own. Like, I'm looking at the fact that there's not really that many great fairy types. And when you have a 95 special attack then for the Clefable for Moonblast, like, it's not the same as like some of the other Pokemon that we have in the meta, but that's still going to be a decently powerful hit considering we don't really have the fairy types out here right now. So overall, I think this is just kind of really fun, really annoying. Like I said, it won't be fun to play against, but I'm very excited to watch Clefable shenanigan games, because I think that's going to be, when we're looking at Reg H, that is the Reg H that I'm most excited to see right now, is I want to see someone just style on their opponent with like skill swap, skill swap, skill swap, and just kind of go from there.
And for anyone wondering why we're not talking about Sylveon, who I feel like we did a good job of hyping up Sylveon on the broadcast in Honolulu and talked about how to be more viable.
I know the line. I know the line. I had to say it 1.5 million times. All right, looking at giveaways. Well, for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you can get yourself your very own Sylveon, world winning from our seniors division at last year's World in Yokohama. And double bonus, Sylveon should be very good in Regulation H, so make sure you pick up this one now. Like, free competitive Pokemon, great stuff. And yeah, I guess I'm a liar.
I guess you're a dirty liar.
I'm a dirty liar because Sylveon's kind of underperforming.
So here's the issue, in my opinion. So I'm looking at the speed tiers, right? There's some Pokemon that are slower than it. Ursaluna Blood Moon, regular Ursaluna, King Gambit as well. But King Gambit invests because Sylveon wants to just go all HP and special attack, maybe some defense. Maybe you invest in your you put more in your special attack, because if you put an Intimidator on the team, then your defense can take hits a little bit better, right? But some of those slower Pokemon can speed creep you, and if King Gambit speed creeps you, or if Ursaluna speed creeps you, you're in trouble. And then just casually, let's just look at all of the Pokemon relatively in Sylveon speed tier from the 60 to 65 speed tier? Well, there's both Weezings, there's Primarina, there's Porygon, there's Magnezone, which also hard counters you, there's Incineroar and Grimmsnarl, Hisuian Goodra, Farigiraf, Empoleon beats you, Hisuian Decidueye, Clefable is also 60, Tyranitar gets a special defense boost when you try to hit it. Also, Scizor is going to be a problem for you, as well as Gothitelle. It would be a bulkier Pokemon in that speed tier, right? So I just think, even though Sylveon is strong, I'm not going to say it's not. Like, it just feels like it's just in the weirdest, most awkward spot on a team that you'd rather have a fast fairy type like Whimsicott or rest in peace Fluttermane, or a super slow fairy type like Hatterene.
Yeah, and I will say for Sylveon, I'm intrigued with kind of going on forward, because you bring up some really good points. But if we're looking at the fact it didn't necessarily get to perform the best at the VGC Trainer School, it wasn't actually that well represented. And some of these teams, too, I think struggled with this is early format. This is one of the first tournaments, like, post-Worlds. I don't really, I'm still figuring things out. Like, one of these teams has Primarina and Sylveon. You're doubling up on this right now, so it's kind of a little bit more rough. There was that did make it to the 40th place, going 6-4. I believe 6-1 would have been the record for day 2. So they made that day 2. And then Henry Rich at 4-1 before dropping from the tour with his Sylveon build that had Salamence as well as Sand with Excadrill and T-Tar. So I think that Sylveon will always be a Pokemon that maybe there's a couple that get through for decently high placing teams, but I don't think it's going to be like the fairy type in the format compared to like the other things, whether it's we're just not having a fairy type, we're going for something else, or we're going to kind of go for the Primarina, which is also an interesting show up in this format.
Yeah, I mean, at least Primarina gets Haze, right? So you have
exactly.
You have a hard-hitting Moonblast from Primarina, same type of attack bonus on it, and you also have a Dondozo answer where the Sylveon not really helping you too much there. Like, I would love to try to make it work. Maybe see, get together with Rose, get in a little team building chat, and build the best Sylveon team. I mean, that team you were talking about in 40th place from Ash, that is it harkens back to the old Japan Sand Core, if you've ever heard that, from 2015. There was a Tyranitar, Excadrill, Amoonguss, Sylveon, Rotom Heat, and it was either Mega Salamence or Kangaskhan. Maybe you could change your Mega up. But basically, like, that Japan Sand Core was like, these are just really 5 well-rounded Pokemon that are somewhat in the same speed tier, but then I guess Salamence gives you the Tailwind, and Sandstream gives Excadrill the double speed. So if that core comes back, and that might be a way to have your Sylveon do it, but like, you're also accidentally countered because people are already running Wide Guard, not even for Sylveon, right? So like, Hyper Voice is not as effective just accidentally, because they already have access. They're trying to stop other Pokemon. So I do love Sylveon, one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, but I don't know if we were being truly faithful on the broadcast by saying how relevant it was going to be in the meta.
My bad, dude. I'm just trying to give away some Pokemon, is all I'm saying.
I mean, it's a great Pokemon. A great having in the what is it, Cherish Ball or whatever. I think that's a cool design, but
Yeah. I think this is a good opportunity to start talking about some of the usage that we're seeing already coming out of the grassroots, because this obviously doesn't paint an entirely full picture, but I think when you are looking ahead at Baltimore, being able to see the common trends, because you could kind of be on a right idea, but if you have the right team and the wrong meta, you're kind of a little bit cooked. So from the get-go, we've talked about a lot of the new Pokemon, some of the ones that we're seeing a little bit more atypical of. But this top 12 usage, which I'll also say, this first one that I have is for that trainer school event that we were talking about, over 400 players. It was Rillaboom and Incineroar to be leading the charts as the first and second place, respectively. 41% Rillaboom, 35% Incineroar. I think for the Rillabooms, it's just standard. Incineroar, you can kind of decide to go for a Flare Blitz, since it actually is going to have a little bit more impact in this format, or whatever you want. Incineroar is a cat of many talents, right? Going on from there, Golden Go is actually right on Incineroar's tail, literally at 34.94%. So literally 0.2%, less than 0.2% behind. Then, despite the fact that it seems like it's everywhere in the ladder matches, Pelipper and Archaludon have the 4th and 5th place spot, both at 25%, which is funny, but I feel like with how often I queue into them, like it's way higher.
Yeah, it feels like one more person had a Pelipper that, like, because it's 25.75 and 25.06. It was just like one guy or two guys didn't bring Archaeodon on their Pelipper teams.
Yeah, and like when I'm looking at this as well, going down the next couple, in order, Amoonguss, Basque Legion, King Gambit, something we haven't talked about, but it definitely is playable in this format. Volcarona, Blood Moon, Primarina, and Farigiraf. Farigiraf, I mean, no surprise. This does reflect quite well into what VGC Beta posted out, which was 333 top teams from the 13 biggest Limitless Tour since last week's report. Which, this one has Rillaboom in top spot, Golden Go right after, and then Incineroar, but then everything else kind of falls in line pretty shortly after. Like it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, we can definitely determine that Rillaboom is the top dog, the top gorilla in this format by far. I expect it to be over 40%. If it was over 40% in the trainer school and the aggregate of the top 300 teams, it's 40% on Rillaboom. Like, expect it to be at least 40% of the meta going into Baltimore. But Golden Go is just like such a massive Pokemon that it peaks and valleys, right? Where it feels like, depending on the format, Golden Go, depending on like the meta as it evolves, Golden Go goes from like non-existent to just like super strong, or like just sleeper pick to like super strong everywhere. And one of those frustrations I had back in Regulation A was like the Murkrow Golden Go teams. They were Murkrow Golden Go Hydreigon, like just some of the other issues, like that it's super strong and they can click 5 different things every turn. You don't know which of them they're going to choose. And I want to see how Golden Go develops in this format, as I would suspect most often right now, probably just going for specs damage. But of course, there's always the Nasty Plot Leftover set or Nasty Plot Citrus Berry set as well. And if you have more supportive Pokemon, if you have more redirectors like Indeedee or Clefable or other stuff, I can see you getting away with Nasty Plot. But if you're running if it's on a Whimsicott team or a Talonflame team, more likely it could be a Choice Specs Tailwind version. You just click super strong, make it rains.
Yeah, it'll definitely be like, I was thinking during that, like maybe I want to make like a Talonflame Golden Go. That could be fun, but I'm just thinking okay, well, somebody all of a sudden like leads Pelipper and Duraludon, like your Make It Rain ain't doing too much here, like, bud, right? But then you hit the Nasty Plot and they can do quite a bit back to you. So it'll be interesting. I definitely think it's worthy of the 37%, what we got to see in past formats. And I feel like the up and down is just kind of like the flavor of the week. I don't think it's ever been down because it's been bad. It's just kind of how people want to choose to approach the team building for it. But what's interesting to note with the top 333 teams, why they chose 333 teams, I don't know. Like,
I think it was they took a bunch of tournaments and X amount of like top cutting teams. So if top cut wasn't necessarily even, if they took the top 30, like one event they might have taken the top 32 teams, with the next event might have been the top 17, or like, you know what I mean, depending on
I just mean more so the fact we landed at 333 top teams exactly. I think it's just really goofy. I just think that's goofy. But they did this last week as well, and the thing to note is that since last week, the King Gambit, the Basque Legion, and the Volcarona all have like trended up, which I think is interesting, because the King Gambit we only like half mentioned, the Volcarona we haven't really mentioned, the Basque Legion we talked about. We can put that to the side. But going into this format, like the Volcarona was one I had my eyes on right away, and King Gambit I think is in quite an interesting spot. There is strong Intimidator with Incineroar, as well as now the Paldean Tauros that is making a resurgent, also Intimidate, which then puts it in a kind of interesting spot. It doesn't necessarily appreciate the Psychic Terrain, but if you have Rillaboom, like that's fine. And the Volcarona, like if it gets set up, it's absolutely nasty. So,
well, the one I've been excited for is King Gambit. Like, it was one of the first Pokemon I thought of right when we lost these legends, right when we lost our Shifu, right? Like, King Gambit's gonna go back to being a huge. Somebody tell Luca to take King Gambit out of the freezer and bring it back.
Garce would be offended that you didn't like think of him first.
Well, no, because but Joe I think of many different Pokemon with Joe, but Luca, I think of specifically just his King Gambit, you know. Anyway,
Fake friend.
so King Gambit is really strong. As you mentioned, like Incineroar is a very popular Pokemon, but Intimidate in general, I think I've seen some tweets of people saying that they don't even think Incineroar is the best Intimidator. Like for the first time ever, Incineroar is not the best Intimidator in a format it's legal. And like, I don't know if I would agree with that. I do think there are very many other viable Intimidators. As you mentioned, both of the Tauros versions, the Fire version and the Water version, both regular Arcanine and Hisuian Arcanine. I think people are really sleeping on Hisuian Arcanine right now. There's that Choice Band Rock Slides. We don't have legendaries. All these Pokemon, they got lower base stat totals. Like they can't take those Choice Band Rock Slides as well as the legendaries can, right? Remember, it won 6 events in a row. Just throw it out there.
It is true.
As well as Gyarados is back as a really frustrating Pokemon.
Oh, I hate Gyarados.
Right. So like there are a lot of really good Intimidators, and King Gambit kind of just licking its chops, waiting to get that Defiant boost on its end. I do love all the way back from San Diego where we saw the Mirror Herb Paldean Tauros that intimidated King Gambit to get the Defiant boost and then give itself 2 attack boosts, and you're way faster. You just do +2 flare blitzes like right in everybody's face. So but one thing that I think is going to make King Gambit struggle is the steel types in this format. As we talk about Golden Go, we talked about Archaeodon, right? Let's do the math here. So if you just do the VGC, the trainer school open, right? 35% Golden Go, 25% Archaeodon, 17.5% King Gambit. So 35 and 25, that's 60%. You go 77% of players had in that tournament had one of those 3 steel types. So maybe other steel types may be popular, Excadrill or whoever, Corviknight, whatever. But basically, you're going to run into a really strong steel type. You're going to build for it, and I think that hurts King Gambit because people are already trying to break through Golden Go and Archaeodon. So as long as you don't accidentally give it a Defiant boost, I think people are going to be more conscious of it this time around and play around King Gambit better than they used to in the past.
I think that's why, like, the King Gambit teams that I've seen have Volcarona on them as well. So it's like, if they are in a situation where you do have a bunch of steel types, that's where you bring the Volcarona. So Volcarona is one that I'm excited to get a team built around, because I think, too, it's in the face of, like, the rain teams, offhand, I'm a little scared. But I think as the rain teams kind of chill just a little bit, and more counters and, like, more strategies going up against them will come out, like, Volcarona, I think, will be, like, incredibly strong Pokemon. I'm not excited about Gyarados. So, side tangent about Gyarados. But Gyarados has never really died off, right? So, when I think back to Gyarados, I'm thinking of, like, supportive Gyarados set. I'm thinking of, like, loot teams. I'm thinking of when there was a format where there was also stronger Pokemon it's going up against. And I just remember, like, if this Gyarados, like, goes for a waterfall, it's doing no damage. You get a Dragon Dance set, all right. If it doesn't get a Dragon Dance, it's doing absolutely no damage. I didn't realize how weak defensively Hisuian Typhlosion was. And when I was streaming my games, they had a Gyarados on the other end, and I was like, guys, and I'm like, I'm not even worried about this Gyarados because it hits like a wet noodle. Like, it's fine. And then it proceeds to one-shot my Typhlosion right then and there. No weather. It was so dumb. It was so dumb. I was just like gobsmacked, jaw dropped. So not excited to see that Pokemon back. You're used to the
Gyarados being intimidated 6 times, and all the slower.
I'm thinking back to like every time I've casted a match with Gyarados, and I'm just like, this thing is doing absolutely no damage ever. It never does damage. They get a Dragon Dance, it's still hitting like a wet noodle, and then it absolutely just one-shot my Typhlosion. So Gyarados users, rejoice! It's back.
I'm sure Justin Tang's going to be happy. He's going to use one of those, T-Wave taunt, waterfall, Gyarados that does 15.
Doesn't he want Palafin? That's Tang's Pokemon.
Well, hold on.
This Geo that, like, with the Gyarados is going to be like, heck yeah,
Hold on. That's a good conversation. Let's segue this conversation. Because everybody, including me, I was super hyped for Palafin. But we go back to the trainer school event, not in the top 12. We go to the VGC data. Palafin, I think, was only on 3%. It was only on 11 of those 333 teams. So, like, is it as simple as Rillaboom's the number one Pokemon, therefore Grassy Glide beats Palafin, or is there more to why Palafin is not succeeding as much as we thought it was going to?
If Palafin doesn't have a showing at Louisville, I'm willing to admit that it's dead and done. Like, Palafin is been there, done that. Like, it's kind of done. But right now, because when we got to see Palafin really kind of take off, it obviously had like its little thing at like the beginning format reggae and stuff. But when I really think of it, I'm thinking of the Palance teams, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to the same thing. It's early format. We're clicking the brain dead. I have showdown open. I want to press like hard hitting moves type things right now. We're not going for the okay, here is my intimidate, here's my fake out, here's my like we're not kind of playing the slower game. So I think Baltimore will be a pretty fast meta besides the Dozo mirrors. But beyond that, I think we should enter into a place where things have slowed down a bit, and that's where Palafin will maybe do okay. I still think it'll struggle to regain its former glory because of Rillaboom, but I do think it can exist. It's just maybe not his time, you know? The hero's fighting his time.
He's waiting for the perfect time. Yeah, I mean the Palance crew, they're still there. They weren't legendaries, right? Arcanine, Amoonguss, and Palafin, they're all still kicking in this format, but I wonder what you would, I guess that turn that you have to swap out is maybe like it's just so detrimental, I guess. It's always been a downfall of the Pokemon, right? But I guess you could find ways around it. Like, you know, sometimes people would Terra Water the baby form right away to get damage. We saw Paul Chua, right? We saw Paul Chua do that. Like, so like there was ways to catch your opponent off guard, but like I guess in this format, if you're gonna swap out and let me click, you know, Nasty Plot Trick Room or something like that on the same turn, or like Swords Dance Trick Room or Swords Dance Tailwind, something like that. Like, if you're just gonna swap out turn one and let me get away with my greedy turn one, like I'll be more than happy, because I don't care about your, you know, I don't care about you because I got my own Rillaboom. My own Rillaboom's got Grassy Glide.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I think too, like you have to build a team that is then capable of punishing if somebody wants to just kind of set up for that first turn, considering if you're just swapping out your Palafin. We're just not quite there yet, because I do think that is an issue with the team, but that was also an issue with the team in past formats, right? It's not like Golden goes, this is the first format it's legal. That Nasty Plot has always been a possibility. This Armor Rouge, this Indeedee, all that. This isn't the first rodeo we've seen that Trick Room turn, right? So it's about just kind of mitigating that and be able to kind of go from there. So
now it's another Hisuian Pokemon that's been on the rise. I don't know if you've faced off against it, but a Pokemon that
Sneasler?
No, not Sneasler. Hisuian Decidueye was not on my radar. Have you faced off against one or no?
I haven't. I heard about it and I've wanted to get a team with it, but I haven't quite yet. But I've heard like, hey, yo, like this Pokemon could actually maybe be kind of good.
So I would love to see if anyone's brave enough to bring Hisuian Decidueye to Baltimore, because one, it's in that same awful speed tier with Sylveon and Incineroar and Decidueye and Pelipper and, you know, everybody, that's 60 to 65 speed tier.
But upper hand.
But one, upper hand is cool, but two, its ability Scrappy means it just dumpsters Golden Go. And if Golden Go is going to stay at, you know, 37% of the meta, it's are you familiar with its signature move? I know you don't like Legends Arceus, but they made some broken moves in that game.
It's funny because I'm not familiar. I was just Googling triple arrows right now.
Do you have the description on your end, or
90 power, 100% accuracy. Triple arrows inflicts damage. For 3 turns, it increases the user's critical hit ratio by 2 stages and decreases the target's defensive stats. That doesn't seem fun.
Well, it also has a 30% chance to flinch. So it's triple.
Oh, that got updated for Scarlet and Violet.
Right. So triple arrows has 3 effects: high crit, Target's defense is -1, and there's a 30% chance that the target will flinch.
Oh, I was reading the Arceus
one, yeah.
Legends description.
So
My bad.
it's 90 base power, same type of attack bonus as a fighting type, scrappy so you can hit ghost types. Now Golden Go is weak to triple arrows. So Golden Go is going to get crit with its defense lowered, and it might get flinched even if it survives the turn. King Gambit has no shot of surviving that hit, 4 times weak to it. Archaludon, if it doesn't terrastalize out of the typing, is gonna take a lot of damage from it. So I really hope that people can make it work, because like the grass fighting is just such a bad typing, but if there's no fairies in the meta, you can kind of get away with it. You can put it on a Trick Room team if you'd rather not invest in the
Oh, that's an interesting concept.
In the speed. But yeah, I don't think it gets priority. Does it get Sucker Punch? I'm looking at it. It does get Sucker Punch. It's not Stab though. So I think you'd probably just want to use it like a slow Trick Room team. And yeah, like it just, and I know a lot of people are using Scope Lens also. So you just try to fish for like super strong -1 defense crits onto every hit.
That's annoying. That's not fun. But yeah, that would be a fun one to kind of keep an eye on. But
maybe like
Hisuian...
maybe it's like a part of a poll of like some fun Pokemon in Regulation Ace that the OHKO community might want to build a team around, perhaps. Perchance.
There you go. Another Pokemon, Hisuian Pokemon, that could be on a team thing, which is so annoying that I went up against, was Sneasler.
Ooh.
The evolution of the Hisuian Sneasler, or whatever. I don't know. I didn't play the game. But this thing with 130 like base attack stat, 120 speed is actually pretty fast. Then I played up against somebody who had it next to like Indeedee, so they could either follow me or Helping Hand. Mad lad, by the way. The only thing they did was press Helping Hand. And what did they do? KO, 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 wrecked me. I was in shambles. Like this thing, it's way too hard. And it has a stab poison type, signature move, Dire Claw, which also increased critical hit. Like, they love that in the past things. Okay, sorry, no. They updated it so it no longer has increased critical hit, but 50% chance of poison, paralyzed, or asleep. So glad they took away the critical hit thing, because the 50% chance of a status was annoying enough. I just thought I rolled lucky with the not getting crit, so I'm not gonna lie. Now I feel a little worse about myself, but yeah, this Pokemon kind of wrecked me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm also looking at the on, because I don't think in the trainer school one, I don't see a high placing one, but on Tommy Tuesdays, the last Tommy Tuesdays just happened, there was one that got 8th place, so just got into top 8 of Hisuian Sneasler with Palafin, Incineroar, Rillaboom. You imagine Incineroar is going to replace Arcanine in that Palance Fire, Water, Grass core with Amoonguss, Golden Go, and Sneasler. And it's Stellar Terra, too. That's the other thing. So, one, close combat by itself, that hurts. That does a lot of damage. Stellar Terra close combat, that's even scarier.
Man. I don't like that. I don't like it. I don't respect it.
Also, really fast coaching as well with the Unburden.
Yes.
So you can coaching onto Rillaboom or Palafin or even the Incineroar if you have to. So if you're asking me, this is not one of our prediction questions for Baltimore, but like if you're asking me, will there be a higher? Which of the two teams will have a higher placement? A team with a Sneasler or a team with a Hisuian Decidueye? I would wager Hisuian Decidueye, but I could definitely see myself being wrong and like some Sneasler wrecks the tournament.
Well, it's predictions. Like I would guess Sneasler on all offhand teams. So I don't know. Like as a early format sort of thing. Like yeah, I think Sneasler could do it.
Yeah, and some of the other if we look at the winning team from Tommy Tuesday's practice tournament, this kind of feels like the Volcarona core, right? So it's Volcarona, Rillaboom, Paldean, Tauros, Aqua Breed, the water version, Clefable, Kingambit, and Glamora. Like, you definitely need a follow me Pokemon to help support Volcarona. to set up Volcarona. King Gambit, as you already mentioned before, has really good synergy on the Volcarona teams. Rillaboom to help you get more recovery every turn. Paldean Tauros to have your wave crashes into the fire types on the other end that resist fiery dance, right? Like, I think this is a really early regulation H like front runner for like one of the most well constructed teams of 6 so far.
I'm curious about the fact that we haven't seen a little bit more Glamora out of all things.
Outside of Dozo teams.
Yeah, like I think just like the toxic debris in general, the spiky shield, just like the stab attacks that it has. I don't know. Like I feel like maybe it'll always be like a little bit more niche depending on the team, but that was one that nobody's really talked about. And I mean, first place of this tour, right?
Yeah, that's also in the tough speed tier in the 80s. I think it's 87 speed, so it's just right there with all those other Pokemon. I imagine you just run full speed, though. I would love, like, if anyone's listening, they build, like, the first thing that comes in my head, if you're trying to make Glamora, like, the sweeper, is, like, a Tailwind team with either Talonflame or Whimsicott, right? You set up Tailwind, Meteor Beam, get your +1 boost, and then you can just kind of be the fastest Pokemon at +1 and do a lot of damage, and maybe have your slower setup Pokemon in the back once they get all poisoned on the switch in. I agree with you though. I think Glamora, it has been a Pokemon that, because it saw so much success early on with the Dondozo strategy, I do believe it has kind of been pigeonholed in a sense to being a stall Pokemon when it doesn't necessarily have to. I feel the same way about Mousehold, right? Because it had so much core synergy with Annihilate early on for those first couple of months, they're kind of just seen synonymous. Where, like, Mousehold's immune to Astro Barrage and still has Friend Guard, right? So, like, why did people not try to make Mousehold work in Regulation G as a Shadow Rider answer? And they're like, I don't want to run Annihilate. Well, you don't have to. But these Pokemon are kind of synonymous together.
Yeah, I think the last Pokemon I want to talk about before we talk about a couple of the changes for the season. Great news for you Gen 1ers out there. But Gengar has made a little surprising resurgent out of all Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
So out of the Tommy Tuesday practice tour, there was 2 in the top 4. So when we're looking at, okay, well, Primarina, the reason why Primarina is a Pokemon is because, we've Haze, like looking at this Haze stuff. Gengar is a very fast Pokemon, and it does have access to Haze. So you get a fast Haze, and all of a sudden, like, it's gone. The Dombozo, you don't have to worry about it whatsoever. But you can also see a couple different ways to be building out the rest. So in the third place team, we more so had double stab attacks here, Shadow Ball and Sludge Bomb. Curse Body as well, you hit into it, like, your movement gets disabled, you're done. Or, because of the speed, there's another one that's Sludge Bomb, but then instead of Shadow Ball, it has Icy Wind, which I think is kind of interesting. So I'm intrigued if that is more so a flavor of the day. I need a Haze user, or how often we'll see that. I think I like the Icy Wind version a little bit more, because if you're not really committing to, okay, well, I have a Tailwind setter, I think just having some sort of speed control, especially with how many Pokemon are in that same weird speed tier, I think it would be absolutely crucial. But that was the 4th place team, not the 3rd place team, so I don't know.
Yeah, but I definitely I understand where you're coming from with the Icy Wind, because if you look at this team from Spain, Electabuzz, Volcarona, King Gambit, Tauros, Aqua Breed, Gengar, Rillaboom, 4 of those Pokemon can kind of really get close to each other, where the Icy Wind does matter. The Volcarona and Paldean Tauros, both 100 speed, so you're going to have to train them differently. Rillaboom you can make fast. Gengar at 110. Like, there's a lot of Pokemon that a 1 speed drop, that can be the difference between King Gambit outspeeding or Rillaboom outspeeding and not outspeeding, right? So I understand the Icy Wind value. We also saw Icy Wind on, like, speed booster Fluttermanes throughout the year too, so it can make sense. But personally, I do like the number 3 team, also from Spain. Because it still is a similar strategy, right? Still got Rillaboom and Tauros, and you just changed the Electabuzz to Clefable as your follow me user, which is funny. But I like Gengar, and my counter team brain just immediately, I see this Pokemon, okay, well, Haze counter Dozo. Shadow Ball, I'm going to punish Golden Glove if it wants to stay on the field. Sludge Bomb, punish every Rillaboom, which 40% of the teams have Rillaboom on it, because my Sludge Bomb's just going to destroy it. So, like, I like this Focus Sash, just like, I don't know, just send it out, and your opponent is going to, like, be too scared to stay on the field with their biggest threat. I didn't think about Gengar. This is actually like the first time I'm literally seeing it as we're talking here. Like I think
saw
it
the
is.
look on your face.
It is. I know. I can understand the value that it brings. So like I'm excited to try to test it out.
Especially with Focus Sash, like already fast, and it's just super annoying because you're forced to double into it, and then both of these teams having like a Volcarona or a King Gambit, I just think the value in itself is so strong. Volcarona has Quiver Dance. King Gambit has the Sword Stance.
Yeah. I mean, King Gambit does dumpster you though. You literally he's resist Shadow Ball and immune to Sludge Bomb. And even if he had Icy Wind, he'd resist it and have Defiant Boost too. So that's the one thing you gotta be careful as a Gengar user, is the 17% of teams that have King Gambit on them.
That's why you got a Volk though. That's why you got a Volk.
True,
so we're fine out there. All of a sudden you got the Volk, you fire move them, or they hit into you and you burn them. You're gonna be just fine. You're gonna be good. So
the other thing I like about this team, Sierra, because I am not one to be crazy, there are 5 Protects, and the only Pokemon that doesn't have Protect is Rillaboom because it's holding Assault Vest. I love that. I love a good team that can win a regional win a tournament with 1 Protect on the squad. But this team seems like you could bring it. It's almost regional ready with the 5 Protects on it. You know.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. When I look at a team sheet, a lot of the time, like for an event, I look at how many protects. We're like, are we protected? Are we just going for it?
Can I take a turn off? Can I just double protect once with this team? You know?
Like how does this work? But no, that's a good call. So it'll be interesting to see like if that's kind of a more Reg H thing kind of going on, or if it's just these type of architect teams and this kind of team building. But looking ahead at this season. Because we've talked a lot about Reg H, and I'm sure there's going to be a little bit more about Reg H next week as we get ready for Baltimore, and we're going to talk so much about Reg H. So, talking a little bit about changes for the season. So, there wasn't necessarily too much. Obviously, we've already had our big season news with how invites were going to be changed for the season. Only 7, like for NA, the top 75, etc. Best finish limits. Something that they did change, which I think is interesting, though I do think it's a good change, is they changed the amount of CP that you could get from internationals. Which internationals, there's the international and the regional best finish limits are together. So you could go to all 3 internats. That was something that people had talked about, that the CP was, like the championship points was a little bit too high for that. So they did lower it. So
yeah, I think that is one, it's a huge benefit that they are able to like see what the social conversation is online and be able to adjust accordingly, right? Like by announcing the changes to the system so early on, it actually gives them enough time where if they kind of waited too long, it's like, and then an IC already started, you can't go back and change how much they got afterwards. So that was definitely one of the big, I won't say complaints, but one of the big criticisms of the system was that the ICs seemed, although they should be more valuable than regionals, obviously they seemed almost too valuable, and the incentive to the incentive to go to all 3 ICs was just like, it was just like way too massive compared to going to regionals. So while there still will be players, of course, many players will attend all 3 of the ICs this year. Now there's less significance onto that, which I think is good.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, like when I look at an international versus a regional, I feel like the biggest change in between the two is literally just the payouts of the championship points and the money and the title, essentially. When you look at the amount of players that are attending, so NAIC 2024 was 921 Masters. Let's look back at a regional last year. Let's look at Orlando 24 for VGC, how many players this was. It was like 90 players less, 824. Charlotte was, I guess, the next, that Charlotte was the biggest. Orlando was the second biggest, which was then 845. So about 70 less. So we're getting to a point where the regionals are like the same size as the internationals. For VG, I think it might be more of a seat limit thing. I would be curious if we were able to have as many players if we wanted, how big the internationals would be in comparison. But for the point payout to be so drastically different for an event that was just a little bit bigger than some of the regionals that we've been hitting, I think was just a little much. So I do like that they've changed the limit. I still would have liked to see the best finish limit be changed to 1 or 2 as opposed to being all 3 and shared with regionals. But I do think that at least changing the amount of points is a good like start.
So this is where I always get confused because a lot of people express that opinion that they want the BFL to be 1. But like, I mean, in my head, unless I win the IC, my BFL can always get increased, right? If I get top 32 at LAIC, well, then I can go to EUSC and get top 16 and my BFL increased. And then I go to NASC and let's say I get top 4 or something like that. So like, I not that I disagree with the like, oh, there should be 1 BFL. Like, it just seems to me like players that are going to go to all 3 ICs are going to go regardless of if the BFL is 1 or 2 or 3 or 17. Like, they're already going to go to that many, which sucks for the players that can't afford, either by work or money or whatever restraints that they can't attend all the events. But like, to me, it just seems like in something that like people are going to do anyway, regardless of what the actual BFL is.
So the difference for it is how it stacks, because exactly what you said, if the BFL is 1, you'll just keep going to overwrite the thing. But that's the difference. Let's say you're a player that can consistently top 32 these events, right? And you go to all 3 ICs and you get top 32. Top 32 at an IC is 160 championship points. So you now have 480 championship points from your 3 ICs, as opposed to just 160 for your max finish. If you top 32, 3 regionals, you've only gotten 180 championship points in comparison. So I think where it's fair, if you do limit the best finish limit to 1 or 2, my personal preference is 1, is then good, because if what you get is a top 32, you then are like, okay, I got top 32 at LAIC. Do I want to try and push now for a top 16 to get 200 championship points? Do I want to try to go beyond, win the event, to like top 8, whatnot? Or do I skip out on this one? Essentially, like, you then have to make the decision, which I think is just a little bit healthier for the entire player base, like in my personal opinion, because I think that when you're looking at the invites, it should be the quality of the placements as opposed to the quantity. And when you're looking at a best finish limit of 3 for the ICs, it then is no longer a quality but a quantity issue, considering the increased payout. So
yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and anyone that wants a BFL of 1, I just think I think people are going to go regardless, and it's also what we want is not necessarily what Pokemon wants, right?
Yeah.
Because they want the top players to attend every single event, so they have those continual stories. Like, they want the best 100 North Americans to fly to LA and to EU for that event, so they can keep building those storylines and get viewers to watch their favorite players. So, like, I don't know. So this is just one of those things that I don't think I'm not too upset in the grand scheme of it, but I understand where people are coming from.
I think when you're looking at the top player base, like, considering that they're the people that could be getting that first place for the $15,000, the second for the 10K, that regardless of a best finish limit, unless that top player literally got their auto invite off the top 4, I think they're going to keep going to the ICs anyways, especially when you are looking at travel awards. I am intrigued, though, if they are looking at we want our top players at every event, what incentive we're going to give them. Another change that they had for this season is for next year's World Championships, the top players no longer get a round 1 bye. So how it was for VGC Past and TCG is the top players got a day 1 bye and only started competing on day 2. Last year, they changed it, and there was a round 1 bye. So you started the day 1-0 and you joined in on the second round. Now they've eliminated it, and to my knowledge, they've not announced a new incentive or what's going to happen now. And for players that are looking to be competitive, obviously getting the travel award is nice. Like that is what helps people. But I know people would compete because they wanted that buy. People would compete because they wanted to get to day 2. So if you're trying to incentivize the top players into attending all your events to be amongst the top in North America, what's that incentive now?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because no matter how valuable or insignificant that round 1 buy was over the course, like let's say I have no idea, we'd have to go through and see every player that had a round 1 buy and saw where they finished at the end. That'd be, someone would have to work on that to see if that actually helped benefit players chances of making day 2 and making top cut at Worlds. Like, it's, even if it in practice does not help, it still in theory provides players a carrot on a stick to chase, right? And now that you're not going to have that, if the travel award's only 16 people in each region per section of the travel award, well, you have 75 automatic qualifications from NA, and then people who win a regional is going to be closer to 90, right? So you can't give all 90 of those players something valuable because only 16 people are going to get a travel award to the next section. So maybe their answer is they don't want people to have an advantage, right? Like we saw situations of tiebreakers going to the players' benefit that had a round 1 bye, because a round 1 bye counts as 100% opponent win percentage. So like maybe Pokemon is saying like, no, like we went from too valuable too much of a benefit to the top players to just a little bit of a little cookie in their favor to now everyone on the same playing field.
I mean, when you're talking about like it's only a little bit of a benefit, I believe the fact that the round 1 bye counted as an opponent with 100% win rate is the reason that Wolf didn't get get into top 16 and had to play that round of 32 for Worlds, which then he was knocked out in. So like that actually is, it doesn't, at first when I heard about the round 1 bye, like way back when they announced it, I was like, this doesn't really seem too significant. If you're a player that's worthy of winning Worlds, you should win your round 1, right? And then we're way too resistant based of a system to where that round 1 actually is pretty big.
But Arcanine did come out and tweet that this is how it's always worked. So it's not like this was a Worlds thing. If you had an opponent, now it's hard to check into Worlds and then be a round 1 drop at Worlds compared to a regional. But like they said this is the system that's always been in place, that if your opponent was a round 1 no-show and you got the win and they were dropped, it's always been 100%. We just never focused on it, but it's always factored into resistance. It's just because of the grand scale of the Worlds, everyone thinks like, oh, well, now it's a bigger deal, but it's always been a deal.
I mean, regardless, because I wasn't aware of that, but then even then is a very particular sort of system. Like that is still only happening to a couple of people because like it's not the most no-shows in comparison to the top players from every single region now get this buff, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, even if it is something that is, this is how it's always been, not everyone's been aware. And even if it is like how it's always been, it doesn't mean that necessarily looking at the World Championships where it actually comes into play on a bigger scale to where it's like an okay thing. Like I still think that there has to be maybe something, but I do think that if Worlds is getting smaller, that it could also make sense to not have an actual playing advantage, but maybe the top players get some other sort of advantage. Like even just buff the travel award or something and let people have enough money that they could go out for an extra couple days and jet lag and rest or whatever. Hey, you're a top player, like on top of your travel award, here's an extra 2K.
Or
like take your girl out for a nice dinner,
Pokemon
right?
Center time or something like that.
Yeah, get all your stuff first. Like you don't have to stand at the competitor like line to get your stuff in your badge or something of the sort, right? Like I'd be very okay if it's not a playing advantage, but at least something that's like, oh, okay, yeah, you kind of did attend all of our events and you kind of are, one of our top players. Like we kind of got to give you something.
Yeah, but in the grand scheme of it, I don't mind if Pokemon is going to make the stance that like we just want everyone to be equal going into Worlds day 1. No more advantages. Like the advantage is you're a better player, right? So like you're gonna win more than the other player, the guy that finished in 76th. If you're the second best North American, that's your advantage. That you're a better player, you know.
It might be too, because I'm curious then with the less invites for this year, and obviously then taking away the advantage for top players. I think this is a year of like reevaluating expectations, because obviously like still the biggest criticism going into this year is, hey, I'm a player that I don't think I can win events, like win a regional, but I want a world's invite and now I can't get it. So now like I'm sad. Or hey, I'm a top player and I used to be able to get this day one buy, now then a round one buy. Now I don't get it. Now I'm sad, you know? So I think it's a lot of feelings going into this season that only will we know next year after the World Championships whether we actually fully did like the changes based off of the circuit. Since it is also new and just kind of more so unprecedented.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect way to put it, that we're going into uncharted territory. And just like how people were excited for Reg H that are now not excited for it, or people who were bummed for it that are now enjoying the format, maybe people will like the new world system and the new qualification system, and then they finish 76th and they don't, you get in, or vice versa. Maybe somebody hates it right now, but then they feel like it's more fair, like the new system is the best of the best instead of just everyone that went to 9 regionals and stuff like that. So I'm sure many opinions are going to change over the next, I guess, 10 months by the end of NASC next year, you know?
I think at the end of Worlds, because at NASC there's always like the heartbreaker moments. I think it's going to be elevated with the fact it is a hard 75 cutoff. I think there's going to be elevated of the hard feelings, but that's always been a thing.
But that makes our jobs more fun. That makes our stories better.
No, it stresses me out, man. It stresses me out. Like, I love the storytelling of the win and ins, but man, I get like way too emotional about them. Like, I could not even know the players that well and watch like the win and in, and one of them will like be really upset after, and I'm like, I'm upset now too, man. Like,
I don't know. I mean, I love, like, obviously I feel bad for the people in the moment, the drama that they're going through, but like, I remember how cool it was at NASC 2023 when I think Raghav needed to make the finals to make top 8 of day 2, or you know, the travel award and stuff for 2023 Worlds, and that was the story the whole weekend. And oh my god, he does it. Now imagine the drama of, oh, he just has to be one of the 8 best players. What if we extrapolate that X person needs to make top 4 to qualify for Worlds? Like, the drama is even higher scale. I love it.
But like, that was for like travel award stuff. So like, I'm not heartbroken if someone who had the money to go to other Pokemon events is now in 9th place and has to pay out of pocket to go to Worlds. So like, I was fully invested in like the top 8 in the travel awards, but that was also for the World Championships, the last World Championships, with the day 1 bye. And so it wasn't heartbreaking to lose the spot. You still got to go to Worlds. You still got all of this. Like, so I was fully invested in that. Like, I was so invested in that because it wasn't somebody getting their hopes of going to Worlds knocked out, right? They just had to like play through day 1. But people that are going to be knocked out of that top 75, that is your World's dream gone. And if you're on that cusp of like 60 to 90, especially if you're like that 76 to 90, those are players that are trying to get into. That is a good chunk of players that at the end of the weekend are going to be heartbroken. Like, that is going to be so sad. I do think that having a smaller World Championships, I don't necessarily think I'm a fan of the qualification system. I do think a smaller World Championships in general for a game that does have RNG is going to be for the benefit of competitive. I do think that there is still a lot of issues like with the system and the qualification and not having other incentives for more casual, half competitive players to play for. But I am, again, like, I'm going to hold out complete judgment until after next Worlds, because, hey, maybe it's the best World Championships ever. Maybe it absolutely sucks, you know?
Well, the one thing that I haven't even heard anyone talk about, so like, I guess it's not a thing, is the auto qualifications if somebody wins 2 regionals. And no one's really talked about it. Like, let's say, for argument's sake, Joe Garce wins Baltimore, right? And then he goes and wins Louisville. Does, like, my first thought, which a lot of people had, is like, well, does the finalist in Louisville get the world slot? Because that's how other esports operate sometimes. And my understanding is no, that's not what we have. So there's no day one bye anymore. There's no round one bye anymore for Joe to have the incentive to win 2 regionals. So like, if he like the championship points, clearly he'll be in top 675 because he's won 2 regionals. But like, I don't know. I just feel like some other people would have predicted there was a chance that you can have that trickle down, or like someone in UIC gets second and then they already have the world's invite, so that trickles down to the person in 5th or 6th or something. Like I thought maybe that could be a way to get more people qualified for worlds that way, but I guess that's not what we have in store for this year.
I don't know if I necessarily like it,
because like, what does Joe get for winning that second regional besides the money? Obviously,
that's exactly why I'm like, what are we then offering top players? If the whole thing is we want, like, do we want the top players attending all the events, and that's why we didn't put a best finish limit on the internet, or do we not care and then we're not giving, like, that's kind of why I'm intrigued if they will change anything going on forward, because as it stands, the only incentive for the top players to keep competing is if they think they're in danger of getting knocked out of the top 75. If you win 2 regionals,
right,
that's 1,000 points. You're not really at risk of getting dropped out. So then why are you attending another event for the rest of the season?
It would almost make more sense if winning a regional didn't give you an auto invite, right?
No, that's a bad system.
Hold on, slow down. I'm not saying it's what we should do.
Also, sorry, regionals are 500 points is for an internet. Regionals are less.
So what I'm saying is, if we used to live in the old world where winning a regional did not give you a auto worlds invite, it would make more sense for Joe to win multiple regionals because he would have to stay in the top X amount to get his worlds invite. But now that you automatically qualify no matter what, besides the money, which is obviously a big factor because some of these players are professionals, they have esports teams and they play at every event, they get paid to play or whatever. Like, it just feels weird that we can leave Louisville without a second person getting that stamp to Worlds. You know what I mean? It just feels weird to me in my head.
I mean, I'd much rather you wrap your head around that, because literally last year was the first year of the auto invites. Before that, it wasn't. So we would go out of regional weekends and somebody didn't earn their Worlds invite. But not having an auto invite for a regional winner, I think, is just a fully bad system.
But that was just hitting a CP threshold, and players would have 2,000 CP, and it didn't matter. So that's different than having to stay with the field.
Yeah, but I think just in general, because even like hitting the field. So I'm looking at Piper Lapine in TCG. Literally wins 2 regionals, and like there was a possibility, I think, because she was busy with school, because kid's a genius, that she couldn't get her Worlds invite after winning 2 regionals, which was crazy. And that wouldn't change in a threshold-based system, because if you win 2 regionals, get 400 championship points, you're still falling short, right? You're going to fall short of that top 75 or whatever it is for TCG. I actually don't know what it is because there's so many players. And I think when we're looking at players that I would like to see playing at the World Championships, it's people that can win events. So if you win a regional, I think you should always be on that list. And if you're second place, like, you should be good enough to prove that you can get that invite and still push on forward, but you didn't win the event. Win the event if you want the auto invite, right? Or top 4 in internet if you want that auto invite. But like, I think it's fine. It doesn't necessarily go down. I don't think I would have had an issue if it did go down. I don't think I really care either.
Like, I want us to be on the same page. I am not saying regionals should not have the auto, in case we're lost in translation here.
Okay.
I've never once,
that was the part I was passionate about. I was like, absolutely not.
Right. So you're like picking out something I didn't say. Never once did I say regionals should not have the auto invite. I'm just saying other esports would have it trickle down. There are people who thought, hey, that would be a good idea. That could be a neat idea. Maybe not good or bad, just a neat idea if it did trickle down. And I was saying in an alternate world where you don't have the auto invite from a regional win, you have more incentive to keep playing after your first one. I'm not saying I'm not saying we should live in that world. I'm just saying currently, once you get that first regional win, you have less incentive than if there was no auto invite. Just to make sure we're all on the same page here.
All right. Yeah. So that being said, because we don't live in that world and I don't want to live in the world, I don't really care if they like don't put the invite down or they do. I think if we're looking at people that are grinding out through the 75, in comparison to the people who get the auto invites, I would be a much more fan of which it would then be too many people with auto invites for worlds, but looking at a finalists like first and second off of regional if we're doing top 4 for internats, because I don't know if I necessarily like top 4 for internats, but top 4 for internats as well as top 2 for every single regional would just be too many people, so it makes sense that it's only first, but then it also kind of makes sense that it's not trickled down. I'm not too surprised to hear it doesn't trickle down, considering if somebody ends up in the top 75 of championship points but decides not to attend world, 76 doesn't get their spot. 76 is cooked. Somebody just took up a spot and shattered somebody's dreams.
Yeah, those are separate conversations, right? Like, also that it's still one person that weekend leaving Louisville. Like, if Joe wins the first 2 regionals, it's not like we're gaining more people that have qualified. It still is Joe, and then let's say, I don't know, Navjeet loses to Joe in the finals. Like, if you're still leaving Louisville with only 2 people qualified, so it's not like we're extrapolating qualifications faster, you know?
Yeah, but it'll be, I don't know. I feel like I'll have a lot of opinions after the season's done and I've gotten to see it all play out, but as it stands, like, I don't care. It doesn't go to second place. You can tell I'm obviously very passionate that there is an auto invite that still applies, even though we're a little bit misaligned on that conversation from the get-go. And yeah, Worlds in general, I think will be quite the interesting spectacle. In good old Anaheim.
Good old Anaheim, yeah. Hey, you can book your tickets now. We have the dates. That's like one of the quiet things that we, we should give Pokemon praise for both 100%. Anaheim and San Francisco. Not waiting till EUIC at the last second of Sunday night, and or whatever to announce the dates and making our already expensive trip even more expensive because you could only book it 3 months in advance. Like, telling us now a year in advance, 2 years in advance from San Francisco, that's going to save people a lot of money.
It definitely seems like they are listening. I do understand that, like, at the point where people were tweeting out, like, give us World State, like, they were pretty short out of EUIC, and if they've already hard committed to, hey, this is when we're announcing it, I don't think they're just going to do a Twitter drop a week before when they've already, like, all right, this is kind of what we committed to, right? But to actually hear that and listen going on forward, like, that's a good change. So I'm definitely glad about that, especially because considering it's in mainland US, I would like to go regardless. So
yeah, sure.
All right, question of the week time.
I think it's about time we wrap this one up.
It's been a long episode, so I have deadlock. I have to go play.
All right. So our question of the week, and for anyone who wants to ask us a question on the podcast here, make sure you join our Discord. We have a little sub channel. You can ask us questions every week that we talk about at the end of the episode. So our question of the week comes from Fendi G. They ask, if you were asked to be a pinch hitter caster for a different game, either Pokemon related and also not Pokemon related, which would make you the most excited?
All right. Do you want to answer this one first, or do you want me to? I feel like my answer is pretty obvious. We have 2 answers,
right? We have another Pokemon game and then a non-Pokemon game. So I guess, do you want to cover Pokemon first?
Yeah, I'd be down. So for myself, for Pokemon, it's a little weird because I'm actually pretty split between Pokemon TCG and Unite. If you had to ask me based off of knowledge and everything, like right here, right now, like I'm still going to be working on other stuff. Unite, because I've still been like more involved in that game. I've also had the pleasure of casting for both Unite and for TCG, like for Pokemon, which is cool. But Unite has been something that I've always been drawn to. I've always really enjoyed it. I love the energy. Their team just like with the chaos, it just seems like a lot of fun. Pokemon TCG is definitely something would be like okay, you can no longer cast VGC. We're going to throw you completely into a game. What would you like? And I think I would really enjoy TCG from there. I just think a card game in general, to be casting at a level that I would be satisfied with, you do need to be committing a lot of time. Like when I did cast for Pokemon, I got to cast at Toronto and Arlington. There was no VGC going on at the time. So I could commit the time into it. But if I had to like, oh, you're still kind of getting pulled in different directions and you have to pick up TCG, I couldn't do it. So I'd have to pick for a Pokemon game, I'd have to pick Unite.
I think for me, I love Pokemon TCG and I enjoy watching Go with how great our casters are. But if it were up to me to pinch hit as a caster, it'd be in Pokemon Unite. I think it's the skill set that I have as a broadcaster is probably most closely connected to Unite. I also have a lot of experience casting grassroots League of Legends events as a different MOBA. So when I've casted Unite events before with like Unite Battle Hub and other places that like I've essentially kind of taken that League of Legends commentary skill set and kind of tried to apply it to Unite. So I think that's probably not only would that be the one I'd be the most excited to do, but I think that'd probably be where my skill set would be used best as a pinch hitter caster, you know?
Makes sense. And I kind of forgot like the phrasing was pinch hitter. So like if I had to just straight up answer pinch
Like,
hitter and
like,
not go on a long
oh my
rant,
God,
like
Sierra,
yeah,
Chip is in the hospital. Like we need you to go cover TCG right now. Like that's kind of that's what I imagine the question is like. Poor Chip.
Poor Chip. But yeah, if I had to just pick one up, I would say Unite out of the two. So sorry, Chip, you'll have to call somebody else. But like I said, I would gladly do other, but I would be leaning towards Unite. So I feel like both of our actually yours could be a little bit more interesting for the different games. So I'll answer mine first because I think mine is very obvious. I'd love to get more into Valorant. And by more, I mean I want to be tier 1 Valorant caster. I want to be out in LA. I want to be at Masters. I have Masters Toronto next year. And like some friends have been like, yo, Sierra, you got to make sure you're good enough that they'll pick you up as talent. And it's like, that's not how their talent pool works. So like, I'm not making it. Like, trust me, like I'm not even at their LA studio yet. But I'm very involved in the tier 2 scene for Valorant. I've been involved with all their challengers. I've been involved in Game Changers, Ascension. So I would love the opportunity to do that on an even grander scale. I just love Valorant. I love the stories, the talent. Like I love everything about it. So like I would drop anything. Like if I was casting Worlds and I got a call being like, Sierra, drop what you're doing. We're bringing you out to Masters. Like I might dip. I might actually dip, you know? Like, I cannot express how badly I want to get into Valor. And I think that maybe goes a little unnoticed at times because I don't really tweet about it as much. But no, like, I do genuinely love Valorant so much. And, like, it's an easy answer for me. That Valor,
I just like to imagine you like call Katie and you're like, oh Katie, I think I'm coming down with son. I gotta go. And then like we just still see your Valorant posts when you're in LA or like, you know, she tried to pull a fast one, but like she told on herself because she's still posting about it.
And if anybody's listening to this, Katie's listening to this, anyone who's ever thinking of hiring for the future, I have never skipped out on one. Like I have never called in sick to a broadcast to do another one. If I had a signed contract and I was at Worlds, I would stick at Worlds. I would say no to the other opportunity as I have done. I'll always commit.
Would be Valorant.
I would just be real freaking torn because it's like, you know, like I'd be crying in the bathroom in between rounds every day at Worlds. Is like all I'm saying.
So yeah, I think this is it's a tough answer because there's so many other games out there, right? And so like if we're specifically honing in on like being a pinch hitter caster, like there's, you know, I'm at Madison Square Garden and Captain Flowers has the flu and they're like, oh, here's semifinals of the World Championships, Faker's playing. Hey, can anybody cast League? Like they asked the crowd, well, I can do it, you know. That's what I'm thinking in my head. It's like I would love to cast League. Like the same way that you are with Valorant is how I am with League of Legends. I so desperately would love to get into that scene more than the occasional grassroots, you know, event online. Like actually going to somewhere in person with like important tournaments, things on the line. But I think I'm going to go are we going to go in a different direction for my answer here, Sierra? I'm going to go with traditional sports. I'm going to go. Like, I would love if I could just fill in traditional sports, either baseball. Like, I did a lot of college sports while in college. Did baseball, softball, football, volleyball, basketball, like a lot of different things. And like, I had a lot of fun doing traditional sports because that's where my background was, right? Ever since I was a kid, I've watched sports. I still watch sports every day, to this day. So I would love if I could, I haven't done a football broadcast since literally I was 18 years old. I was the second week on campus at my college. The sports radio department was looking for people to sign up, and I told them my background or whatever. Like, okay, you want to call the New Haven football game this Saturday? I was like, so I was literally just turned 18, second week of college, and I was already on the radio broadcasting a football game, and the energy was just so electric that that would be awesome if I could pinch hit for traditional sports for a CBS Sunday afternoon football game or something.
I didn't even think of sports. That'd be really cool. Like if I got the opportunity for a soccer or a hockey or
curling,
rugby even. I don't know if I want to cast curling. Dude, I don't know, I feel like the energy I have sitting and watching curling is not the most professional. So if they were yo, we need somebody with energy casting, because mine is just oh my god, no, the shot is gonna make it. Okay, look at this, and it's pointing out things, and it's just kind of the giddy overexcitement. Because you've casted with me, you know, when I'm just the point, and it's that energy, but it doesn't get refiltered into being a professional broadcaster. It's just unbridled that energy. So I don't know if that one would work.
But I think curling could work for you because of your the TCG background and VGC background of filling time between action, right? So you'd be able to have those conversations. Oh, should they try to sweep here, sweep there, blah, blah.
Oh my god,
I don't know the things. I don't know what you're supposed to do. So I'm just throwing words out. I think that could work for you because you have experience in games that aren't constant. Hockey is 6 things, and you lose your breath because there's 6 things happening at once for 20 minutes straight. At least I think curling could be up your alley.
It's a very different mode because for curling, it's very much so okay, was this shot right or wrong? Okay, why wasn't it? Should they have gotten off the rock faster? Did they just straight up whiff? The strategy going throughout it. I just think that it's just so interesting, but it's a lot slower in a way that I don't know if it'd be as I don't know. It would be interesting to look into it. I don't think the opportunity is coming my way anytime soon, so I don't have to make that decision, but it would be fun. Hockey is very much so you don't have to add your own flavor going into it. It's to Daniels over to Rogers back down to Joe Brown, you just kind of call the names and possession and stuff. And
it's hard though.
Track of it fast.
Because you're
I know it definitely is
you're
hard.
200 feet away. I think of the traditional sports,
very different.
Hockey's probably the most difficult to commentate.
Very different skill sets because it is going so fast. So it's you don't really need to fill with too much more. You could be puck over to Daniels, Daniels around the back. You but it's not you have to analyze each play. It's getting late. I'm getting added for Valorant. I'm
right, let's get at it.
We talked too much about Valorant. I want to go play now. But Riverside did the pause thing again, but it's fine. Okay, we're gonna close this one out. I got this. But we have yapped for a long time. So if you made it to this point of the episode, thank you so much for tuning in. The Discord description is down below if you're interested in joining the Discord. That's where we have our question of the week. And we have a really, really awesome community as well. Even been shouted out as a great place for VGC resources and kind of getting to chat with people. So thank you to everyone who is a part of the Discord. Appreciate you all so much. But we'd love to see your face there if you haven't joined it yet. So why haven't you joined it yet? You should go and join it. But no, for real, thank you so much for getting to this point. We'll be back next week to talk about Baltimore predictions and a little bit more of Reg H. But this is all for today. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next time.